Hello, I'm H.G. Tudor. The question that's often thrown my way is, are there more male narcissists than female? What's the split between the two? Now, traditionally, it's always been viewed as the fact that there are more male narcissists than female. But that is based upon the current assessment, courtesy of the DSM, of the behaviours that make up narcissistic personality disorder. And, as I have explained in my video, The Borderline, which you all should watch, there are many female narcissists that are actually claimed to be borderline when they are in fact narcissists. There are also numerous females that are described as histrionic, but again, they are actually narcissists. So what is the split? Well, based upon my own experiences, I would place it at approximately 50-50, that there are as many male narcissists as there are female. However, there is more detail to this. In simple terms, there are more obvious male narcissists than there are female. Why? Well, part of this is because of the concept of patriarchy, that a lot of male narcissists got themselves into a position of power, wealth, and influence, and thus became those that controlled countries, organisations, political movements, states, football teams, sporting teams, and so on and so forth. How did this come about? Well, quite simply, this patriarchy revolved around the fact of a biological reason. There are some that think to themselves, well, men rose to the prominence in the way that I've just described because they're physically stronger than women. That might be true across the whole breadth of individuals, but there are plenty of strong women, both in the physical and mental sense. Indeed, I have seen women undertake tasks which demonstrate they've got a higher level of pain tolerance than men, engaging in back-breaking work, and doing so day after day. I've also witnessed certain women endure certain physical circumstances and fight also, in a way where they would defeat certain men also. Now, the reason why the patriarchy came about was quite simply this, that when it came to the fact that women are the ones that bear children and men do not, that in effect, for a circa 9-month period or thereabouts, that woman did need somebody else to help her, to provide for her. Now, of course, we can all point to instances where there are those people who have, perhaps very early on, been deserted by their partner or somebody that they weren't even with who is not interested in being involved with the child, and they brought it up themselves. But often those people will have to seek help elsewhere, not always, but they do. And the fact is that in the majority of instances, because the woman was the one bearing the child, it was left to the man to be the breadwinner, that he would undertake the more physical chores. And in essence, because she was tethered to the pregnancy and thereafter the weaning and raising of the child to a greater extent than the man would, that meant that she was hampered, handicapped in a way, in terms of those certain positions. Now, of course, if a society had been created where non-childbearing women said, well, I will assist in the looking after of your child so that you can continue with your career, your advancement in politics, then maybe a patriarchy would not have existed. But it didn't span out that way. And instead, because it was the men that were allowed to get on with what they wanted to do, because they weren't involved in the rearing of the children to the same extent as the mother, in essence, and I'm putting it in broad brush terms, a patriarchy originated. And this meant that those individuals were also those that were best suited to seeking out power because of its, and wealth, etc., because of its capacity for the provision of the prime aims. And thus, those narcissists that were male tended to get into the prominent positions, and thus it became more obvious that where one saw a narcissist, it was more obvious because they held a position as head of state, that they were the head of a corporation, that they were wealthy in some way, that they were a well-known performer. that they were the prominent academics, doctors, lawyers, etc. And thus those which were narcissists amongst those groups gained prominence because the women were essentially in less prominent roles. There were certainly female narcissists, but they were not seen prominently, and therefore it created a skewed perception. It caused people to think, there's lots of male narcissists, look at these power brokers, look at these power-hungry zealots. These are, of course, all men. It's only because those particular types of narcissists held prominent positions which enabled them to be seen. Behind the scenes, if you will, there were plenty of female narcissists. When it comes to emotional empathy, it isn't the case that women are imbued with it more than men, not at all. Men have been taught, of course, to shroud their emotional empathy, but it's there, and women are encouraged to display it where it exists, of course. And remember, for mid-range narcissists, it's all too easy for them to demonstrate that fake emotional empathy. So what they end up doing is, through again the existence of a patriarchy and assigned roles, women are seen by society as more empathic, maternal, nurturing, caring, part of which is why the borderline diagnosis arose. See that video to understand more of why I say that. But in essence, what you have is that the male narcissists are more obvious because of the prominence that they gain through patriarchy, while the female narcissists are just as numerous, but weren't seen as much. When it comes to the classifications also, lessers tend to be dominated by men, more overt, in accordance with the more aggressive, outgoing, grandiose, robust, belligerent behaviours. Mid-rangers contain more females than there are men. So although there is a 50-50 split across narcissists as a whole, the proportions by virtue of each school vary. So with lesser, the split's around about 75-25 in favour of men. With mid-range, the difference is somewhere around 75-25 in favour of women, maybe 70-30 or such like. And then when it comes to the greaters, there is a 50-50 split, thereabouts. And therefore, overall, it's roughly 50-50, perhaps leaning slightly towards the men, but not by much. There are further breakdowns by each sub-school, but I'm going to share that on another occasion. So overall, the split is 50-50, but it is simply this. Male narcissists are more prominent because of the positions they've got into, and they dominate the more obvious narcissists, which are your lower lesser, middle lesser, upper lesser A and upper lesser B. Amongst the mid-range, where you have more female narcissists, they fit in with the fake empathy, with the supposed empathic role, with the supposed caring, etc., and are therefore more likely to be diagnosed as something else because of those biases, and, in general, not be seen for what they are. And therefore, in the circumstances, you are going to find that there are going to be far more mid-range narcissists in existence than there are of a female variety compared to the male variety. And as I mentioned, with the greaters, the split is roughly equal. So there we have it. A broad brush explanation, which I'll be going back to in a further occasion to go into greater detail, to expand upon the points that I've made, but just to answer this question, which is often posed to me. I'm H.G. Tudor. Thank you for listening.